Engagers, this is Professor Game, where we interview successful practitioners of games, gamification, and game thinking who bring us the best of their experiences to get ideas, insights, and inspiration to help us in the process of using games and gamification in our daily lives, for example, to learn what we are teaching. And I am Rob Alvarez. I work at IronHack, teach at IE Business School University, and so much more, and host this podcast. If you have an extra second, please go ahead and subscribe for free to our email list at professorgame.com/subscribe. Hey Engagers, welcome back to another interview with the Professor Game podcast. And today we have Valentin with us. But Valentin, before we take off, are you prepared to engage?
Always ready.
Let's do this because we have today with us Valentin Briukhanov. And I did my best, and I think it was not a terrible pronunciation according to the feedback I got before the interview. So that was my best. If you want to see how it's spelled, you just type Valentin on the search bar, and you'll definitely find this interview and the spelled last name from Valentin as well. And we have him here today because he is a devoted video gamer with 30 plus years experience and started playing on ZX Spectrum. And he's worked 10 years as a telecommunication and software engineer before making a pivot to game development and education, where he's worked at CheckiO and created a ton of coding mini games and puzzles for programmers. And for the last 7 years, he has been working at CodeCombat in different roles, from level designer to game developer and lead game designer back. So Valentin, is there anything that we are missing from that intro that you want to make sure that we highlight before we start formally?
No, thank you for having me. I think it's totally describe my path, and I would happy to tell more about that.
Amazing. So, Valentin, nowadays, recently, what does a regular day with you look like? We want to sort of be in your shoes for a bit and understand what does your life feel like these days?
Oh, it's a tricky question because, as was mentioned, I have to wearing many hats. And we have many projects already. So we started with like one project in CodeCombat, and now we have several of them. So usually, my regular day, it's starting to figure out like what's happening in the company for the last day with project, check the health of the project, like if it needs some my attention, and based on that, I make usual decision. Who am I today? So I'm a game developer, and remember my coding skills. I'm game designer and need to write some documents, answer questions, or I need to communicate and figure out what task for and priorities for my team. So based on that, mostly nowadays I'm working on game design documents, whole vision for the new game. So that's recently my main routine.
Amazing. Plenty of exciting and good stuff going on. Hopefully we'll get into plenty of that during the interview. So Valentin, we want to get, the meat out of this interview as much as we can, always. So we make questions where, we tend to learn a lot from our guests. That's something that we enjoy very much. And the first one, and one that is always very interesting for our audience as well, is about a time, when you did what we would like to call your favorite fail or first attempt in learning related to video games, especially if they have anything to do with learning, etc. So we want to be there with you. We want to listen to your story. We want to learn those lessons alongside you. What would you say is that time where you had what we like to call your favorite fail or first attempt in learning?
Oh, my favorite failure, I think one of that, my story, like when I worked in CheckiO, and before we worked on this like coding puzzles, coding games, when we started educational purpose, so we started change our programmer's game more educational way. And on the last stage, we started one of the project which I still love, but sadly it was not finished. It's Empire of Code. It's strategy game to coding strategy game with cool graphics working in browser. So we thought about wide audience available for kids, students of all age, using it for educational purposes. Exactly, we started building educational paths here. But sadly, we maybe chose the wrong moment of time, like because company already had problems, so it was never finished. So sadly, that project like was not finished. But what I learned from that, it's a point when I like fully decided for myself, like I love to be in game dev. And I thought another side of game dev, it's educational side. So I, with those games which we worked already on Checker and the Power of Code, I saw it's possible to make cool, interesting educational game, not just like some boring stuff where you just like add some educational layer without thinking about game. No, exactly quality of the cool, engaging games, but with educational purpose, which players. So my favorite feedback from players is sometimes when they say like, "Oh, I love this game," and I never figure out like I learned something. So when they figure out it, they're like, "Oh." So it's not just game. It's like it's my favorite one. So it means like we exactly got to our target. So yes, that failure with Empire of Code totally proved me it's possible. And after that, I started to search where to work, like, and I got it CodeCombat. And I think based on that experience, we created several cool projects exactly with that intention and working on more of them. I think that's, yeah, my favorite one.
Amazing. Sounds great. Thanks for sharing that experience. I know sometimes it can be a little bit painful to remember those memories, but I
Yes.
think we all profit a lot from remembering them and seeing how to do better, basically, in the future, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right, so let's actually shift. Let's go 180 degrees in the other direction, basically, and look for one of those experiences, of which I know you have plenty, where things actually did go well. And you say, well, we set out to do this, and we achieved that or something different, whatever that looks like, because, sometimes that happens in game design, as you very well know. So we want to be there in that story with you. We want to see what are those, key success factors, perhaps, if you have any. And we want to be there in that on the ground level with you. We want to learn from your experience.
My successes. So one of them, it's a really cool project which we are working already for 2 years. It's AI League. So it's our attempt to make esport competitive programming in game-based form. So we trying to get all our experience with game-based learning, which we already have a lot with CodeCombat active for already 8, 9 years. Oh my god, maybe already. I think it would be 10 even. Like so, I'm working there for 7 years, but it's longer. So with esport idea, we decided like let's make competitive programming cool. And I think we got success. So like we already have like 2 years of nice arenas. It's like PvP competition, but not just like where you solve some challenge, some puzzle. No, you're writing your code to control your army or control your heroes and compete with other players. There's like usually already thousands, 10,000s of players. And another thing which we achieved with this project and which I'm really proud, it working really well in schools. So it was exactly our idea because it can work as a project learning idea. So when students does not have some, okay, you are learning from like this point to point B and you finish like some, for example, as any assessment. No, here you building something. In their case, it's like some code which can compete. So that's it's named AI, and we can build it exactly like project. So on each step, we can see the result. So like you start playing this competition, you write simple code, and you already you win, you lose, but you see how it works already. You starting learning next. So if you want to improve your code, your results in like get further to the like competition ladder, like you need to learn something. You need to learn some programming. So teachers get back to let's back to the classroom, like learn a new concept. Then, for example, I don't know, learn like conditionals, where I got back and use new knowledge again in this competition, make it better. And this step by step, we have interesting, good code, what we can play. And it's the greatest point about what I really like. It gives them confidence, because I see on the play testing, we see feedback from the teachers when it's for students, where can say something like, so coding is not magic. You can learn. So just through the game, and I mean, it's not impossible, because many students
and it does sound like magic to plenty of people, right?
Yes. And many students are afraid of coding, something like, oh, it's really hard. And if you try some competitive programming platform, there's usually like high level for entries. And that's a problem. We're trying, it's scary, we can do it, and we just forget it. And that's what we're trying, like slowly, step by step, just like write simple code in 5 lines, and it works. So this way. And of course, like the main secret ingredient, it's a game. So it does not feel like usual classroom. It's a game. We see the game. We see like how heroes fighting against goblins, ogres, mages, send some like cool spells, fireballs. I don't know what else we have. Or it can be even like some peaceful games where you're trying to compete in building. So again, it's totally feeling the gaming. So we sometimes guess too late we are learning something about programming. Yeah, that's, I think, my favorite project right now. If I don't know, like I can tell about other, so maybe quickly, another project we kind of like finish it and work it. It's Azaria. Like here, I work it with really great game designers and people on that. So it was our approach to make a coding adventure game, which is narrative based, like heavy narrative. So there's like a lot of story, dialogues, and the main motivation to the game, it's exactly moving to the story. And we put this like coding education, not only coding, it's computer science, many concepts about like information security, everything connected. We kind of like hide it in the story. So like it's some dialogues and there's like some fragments which we put it. So again, students just like play interactive narrative game and learn something. And it's a game we try to make it without violence, even like cartoon violence. So now we have like people want peaceful game, welcome Azaria. Where you want to have some RPG feeling, welcome to CodeCombat. Like you want to compete, like, well, and now we're working on one more project with Roblox. Not so much to tell here, but I think it will be even better and new view on the learning coding through the games.
Amazing. So, Valentin, you have plenty of experience, not only creating games, but also creating games that educate or that have some educational purpose as well. So I'm guessing that, with all these years, all this experience as well, all the things that you've already created, you have some form of a step-by-step, some form of a process. Of course, it doesn't have to be like super linear and extra structured, or maybe it is, up to you. But we want to, if you can give us a 5 to 10 minute version of how that looks like, if you were going to face a new project tomorrow, what would be the next things that you would do? And how does that describe until you say, the project is, at least for the moment, it's done?
Oh, that's, yes, it's an experience which we got it painful way. And that's, I think, yeah, it's a point which I always tell anybody who want to make an educational game. So usually what I see when people making an educational game, it's like two sides. Yeah, so it's like educational designers and game designers. And in many games, one of the side, it's dominate to another side, and it doesn't work well. So because like educational designers can think like teachers, like so it's nothing hard to add some game in educational process. Like we all video gamers, like just like add some, and usually we get some not so engaging enough. It's not game based. We just get some, how my friend Bobby tell, usually broccoli covered with chocolate. And another side, it's when game developers, game designers decide like, let's make educational game. We know it's our story exactly from CodeCombat. Like we worked like several game designers, game developers, like, and like, let's educational process. Okay, who knows about education? It's not so hard. And we made so many mistakes. So my advice, like if you want to make educational game, like find experts for both sides, and we should collaborate really strongly. So not one side should dominate at all. So for example, for our any project, like we usually work in such pace with our educational team. Something like first we need to understand like, okay, educational game, educational project, like what exactly our educational goals first, what we want to teach them, like then based on that game designers, like we, especially that's exactly my part, like we're trying to suggest like what game mechanics, like what core loop, what features would be useful for this one. And some way we throw ball to again to educational side. So like, okay, what how does that work? Like what audience? So it's really iterative process working with educational team. Like so again, each one. So does not mean like only educational should dominate. So when we say education, decide about like curriculum, what plan, but it's still like we as a game side can change it and just need to communicate. And tell like sometimes we want to say, some aspect like need some more game mechanics for that. So is it okay if we create some gaps, gaming gaps, for example, and prepare them from the gaming side? So that's why sometimes in our games it could be pure game, no education, because it works really great for students when we learn, and sometimes just like rest a little. We think we rest, and really we just prepare them from the as classical game mechanics. We prepare them from the game side, explain some game mechanics because we need it like for the next hard educational concept. So yeah, shortly summary, like learn to use both sides. So like if it's educational game design, it should be educational and game design, not one side or another one. The main point about game design is communication. So here's the same. So I'm not sure if I answered it like exactly your question. Like, so please.
Well, getting into your mind was exactly what we were aiming for. So thank you for allowing us into all of these things that you think about when you're creating games.
Just a quick break before we continue. Are you enjoying this podcast? If you're listening through a podcasting app, please subscribe and rate us on the app. This will be of great help to reach more engagers so we can change the world together through gamification.
So Valentin, we've been talking about many subjects. You've given us a lot of your experience already, but we want to know if there is something that perhaps you would like to call a best practice, or something that you say, well, when doing things for your games that are for learning, think about this or use this or do this, and your game-based learning or your game for learning will at least be a little bit better. Do you have any recommendation like that?
Yes. First, I would suggest like be honest with yourself and learn to distinguish. Like what is, for example, like I am mostly focusing on game-based learning, and sometimes people mix it with gamification or what I name edification of the like games and different way. It's doesn't, I don't would say like so gamification. It's not the same level. No, it's exactly a different product. It's a different approach. If you want to make a game-based learning, like you need to be fair with yourself, honest with yourself, and check it. Like, so for example, my usual, like how I check it, like what my idea, like, okay, is it really game-based learning, what I want to do? And easiest way, it's how to check it. So if you remove education part of your design, does it break?
Sort of the educational objectives, right?
Yes. If it breaks, it's exactly a good signal. So it means like it's exactly what you want. But another one, like, so if I remove game aspect, like, so I remove some game mechanics, like, so how would it still work? So it's again, if it breaks, that's probably you have like game-based learning. Because example of gamification mechanics, like gamification process. So if you remove game, technically you still have your education. So the main feature of game-based learning, so again, like this game mechanics working to the educational purpose, like, and no way. There is, of course, disadvantage of such way of game-based learning. So it's not so flexible. For example, in our coding games, like if we remove, we decide exactly use the same game for mathematics, like it would not work. We need another game mechanics, another core loop, like something same. But in the same time, if we remove our game mechanics, so coding become just boring. It's not a game anymore. So yeah, but the main advantage again of the game-based learning, so it's students can't skip the part about education because we need those skills we are learning to progress through the game. So we engage it. So it's totally really connected one. However, again, don't maybe another advice like, so be sure you want game-based learning. So because sometimes gamification or edification maybe work really great for your purpose. So maybe you don't need it because, for example, edification, edification, it's something when you take a game and just put educational layer on that. For example, you just like add quizzes on like so imagine like combat, but probability of hit defined of your answer on the quiz. So technically, if you can easily change, like it can be history, mathematics, anything. Like, so maybe if you need flexibility, why not? It can be your choice. So yeah, I think my third advice, like decide what you need exactly first, like what's your goal, like, and what your audience, because based on your audience, different ways work really well. So sometimes edification works, but sometimes gamification and resources. Another like maybe disadvantage game-based learning. It's resource consuming, as I mentioned. Like you need education side, game design side, and it's and again I mentioned like if one of the small part, it does not work, the whole product does not work. So it's kind of fragile, and you need to be sure everything works really great. But if you get it, you usually get really great way to educate and fun way.
Amazing. And that whole I don't want to say what I'm going to push back, but I just want to introduce as well the perspective that it's something that I've mentioned before as well. I agree that there are definitely different things, 100%. Sometimes the only issue is, of course, there's amazing people like yourself and others who already have done a lot of work, have a lot of experience, and that distinction provides some substantive difference to the solution that you're going to be creating. But especially for newcomers, for people who are beginning, and I see this a lot in the workshops I do, and when I get students from business schools or university students who have literally have never seen anything around this, people can actually get more confused than they are able to move forward when we stop too much in the differences. So I sometimes give them a sort of a way out and say, look, you can get into this and understand the depths, or maybe at this point what you want. At this point, of course, in the future, it could be different, is to be able to use these tools. How do you use them, whether it's in a full game, as Valentin was suggesting, or if it's more of a gamified situation? Sometimes they don't really, or it's a simulation maybe even. they don't really distinguish, and they are able to at least take those first few steps and then, of course, get that momentum going. But definitely, at some point, it is very important for you to understand what it is that you're going to achieve and setting those objectives very, very clearly, right? So thanks for that, Valentin. It makes a lot of sense for our audience. So the next recommendation that I would like to get from you is, after hearing these questions, I know you've heard the podcast a few times as well. Is there anybody that comes to your mind, somebody that you would like to listen to answering these questions on Professor Game?
Well, some of the people who I would like to recommend already were guests on your podcast. So I would really recommend and would like to listen. My colleague is Charlotte Shank. She has own podcast even about education. She is a brilliant educator. Like, it's exactly the person who I mentioned about, like, our education side. So we are kind of in CodeCombat, we are exactly this, like, black and white side of the Indian, and she is no, it's not correct to say like Antarini, because we exactly work really great with her, but she knows a lot about education and she can tell the same story what I told you, but from another side, from education side, from curriculum and everything else.
Amazing. I didn't catch the name fully, so if you can either repeat it or send it to me after the interview, that would be amazing.
Yeah, it's Charlotte Shank, and I will send you it.
Amazing. So Valentin, we've talked about the recommendations on creating educational games. We've talked about another person being interviewed on the podcast. But there's something that many of our listeners also like to do, which is reading. Is there a book that you would recommend the engagers?
Well, I'm reading a lot from some, maybe, I don't know, but it's usually dozens books per year. So it would be hard choice. From the game design side, I think it's a book which I always recommend. It's Level Up with exclamation mark. It's, I think, one of the best book for game designer, from beginner game designers. I learned a lot from this book. And another one from the fiction side, I would recommend not a book, but the author, Brandon Sanderson. I think many of you know this one, and I would recommend it because it's a great examples how to build words, like how to build all his books. It's like perfect game words with ideal game systems, how systematic, how everything connected and works together. So it's kind of like fiction way of perfect game design document, I suppose. So, and all of his book.
Amazing. Thank you for that recommendation as well. And in your case, you've been in this industry for so long already. You have all that experience. What would you say for you? What is that thing that you do at least better than most people? That thing you would call your superpower? And bear in mind, in the Marvel universe, you have Thor who flies, Iron Man flies. There's many people who fly, but they have their own unique abilities as well. What is that thing? Maybe it's flying, maybe it's completely unique to anybody else, but that thing that you feel that is your big thing.
Oh, no, that's exactly not so hard question. It's because it's my favorite thing which I like to do. It's creating coding puzzles. Like, I really love to do it. So imagine lead code, but with some story game elements. Like, so I think my superpower, I can take any interview question and create a game from that, or at least some fun element. It's exactly what I done a lot on CheckiO, what I work at in CodeCombat, like in all project, and I love to do it. And so, yeah, I think I can take any coding and make a game from that.
and we can hear in your voice how excited you are about it. So definitely that is there. And Valentin, I would say this is sort of the test question, the difficult question on the podcast, because we would like to know, Valentin, what is your favorite game?
Yes, it's definitely challenge, or it's really hard, because my first game was like 35 years ago. I think I played first video game. So my favorite game changing each year, I suppose. But okay, if one game, I definitely would name Sid Meier's Civilization. It's not a game in this case; it's a series, right? A game, like, because it's perfect game. and especially when I started play on that Civilization, I didn't saw it, but it's great educational game. First, it's encyclopedia of the history here, and it's a complex from the game side. It's a lot of game mechanics, how perfectly this game system works, and so balanced of that. The only point, like, I don't play this game too much because when I start to play it, you usually lose me for a week. Like, so I'm really scared of this game. Yeah, last time I played it like 2 years ago, Civilization 5, and I could not stop. I played 2 weeks without, like, for several hours per day. Like, so yeah, now I buy them all, but not playing them.
So you're a collector of Civilization games now.
Oh, yes, love this game.
Amazing. So, Valentin, before we take off, of course, let us know if you have any final words, any final piece of advice, wherever you want to go for. Of course, where can we find out more about you, your work? What are you doing in CodeCombat and anything else as well? And then we say that it was game over.
I think LinkedIn would be the best place. I usually put all posts here. So yeah, you can find me by name, and I always please connect. I always open to share my experience, because just like without reason, like, because if you want to make something about game-based education side, please approach me. Like, I would love to help share my experience, just because I want to see more projects like that. So as what I like about my company nowadays, we're always open, and we're not afraid, like something like we're not sharing our experience because competitors. No, I would like to see more projects because I see how kids are happy to learn this way. So if you want to implement any idea, please, I would like to help you.
Amazing. Thank you for all that generosity, all your experience, all that knowledge you've imparted today to the engagers, Valentin. However, at least for now and for today, and that goes for you as well, engagers, it is time to say that it's game over. Engagers, it is fantastic to have you around, and thank you for listening to the Professor Game podcast. And if you want to find out more about what we do, who we are, suggest future guests, whatever it is that you want to do, please go to professorgame.com/subscribe and get started into our email list for free. That way we'll be in contact. You'll be the first to know of any opportunities that we might have for you. And before you go on to your next mission, please go to your favorite podcast app, the one that you're using to listen to this very podcast, this podcast episode. Click on that button that says subscribe or that button that says follow. It is absolutely for free. Do that, click on that button, and listen to the next episode of Professor Game. See you there.